Welcome to the Dying Breed podcast. I'm Caleb, and I'm here with Craig Trnka. Craig is the owner and one of the founders. Your family founded the WCB.
Yeah.
And you're one of the most respected farriers in the United States, probably worldwide. I would argue. I'll say that right from the start. I know.
Well, you get up early once, and you can sleep late the rest of your life.
So, let's start out. You're from New Mexico.
I'm not from New Mexico.
Oh,
I
okay.
lived there most of my impressionable years. My grandparents are immigrants from, at one time it was called Bohemia.
Oh, okay.
So, and then they're from farmers in Minnesota, and then my dad and my mom moved to New Mexico when I was 5. So
Okay.
I'm almost a native of New Mexico, but that's why my son Bodie's living in Minnesota, because he kind of wanted to get out of New Mexico. But that's where Minnesota is where my extended family's from, and then I've lived in New Mexico all but 1 year. I went to South Carolina to seek stardom, and I didn't really enjoy South Carolina.
And you have, how many kids do you have?
Just two, Levi and Bodie.
And is Levi in shoeing?
Yep, Levi got the ejection seat. So Levi was going to be a saxophone player, and he went to Eastern New Mexico, and he was in his senior year, and his senior year was going to consist of almost all live performances, and then COVID hit.
Oh.
And they shut it down, and not only did they shut down, but they did away with his major.
Oh, wow. So he went all that time.
Yeah, and the thing that was funny about it is it's hard to keep kids in school because they want to start life.
Right.
And like you can do so many partying, beer parties and all
Right.
that shit, but after a while you want to start life and start making some dough. And he just was like, and I think COVID was marketed towards destroying kids in their 20s.
I think if you look at our education system, we see especially, I would even argue that even more than the 20s. But if you look at the kids that came out of COVID, especially you're like 15, that high school,
it was
some
weird.
of them can't come out and read.
It's weird. So then he says, well, he bummed around. He was in depression because he wasn't in school, but he wanted to make a living. And then he started doing this, that, and the other thing. And then he's like, hey, Dad, I'm going to try my hand at shoeing. Well, Bodie, my oldest son, kind of went with me. He liked horses, and he started at a very young age messing around with the shoeing. But Levi, he has a natural fear of horses. My wife has a natural fear of horses, and I don't think that's recommended when you're going to shoe horses because you end up beating on horses. Most people who are afraid of horses beat on horses. And so then he went, and as it's weird, we don't have to get too far, but I think that opposites. So like the first child was exactly like my wife, so I got along with the first child. The second child is exactly like me, so my wife gets along with the second child. So it was like I'll kind of get Bodie through the gauntlet, and you get Levi through the gauntlet, and everything was going just as the best we could possibly plan until COVID hit, and they gave him the ejection seat, and then he's kind of like wandering around, and then now he's shoeing horses in Pennsylvania with one of our members. He was on the team, Andrew Nielsen, and I think it was good because me and him are so much alike that we fought a lot, right? And I mean, I love him to death, and I think we can cut up when we're not shoeing horses, but I think he needed a different mentor than me.
Right, and I mean, I had that same experience with my dad. We did not get along.
But isn't that you don't get along? You're just the same person, and you don't realize it.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, that's what I would do. That dude's an asshole. You know what I mean? And it's like,
So, and now I find myself saying the same shit.
Oh, and what's kind of funny is you gave me the really nice introduction and this and that, and what's funny is Levi is just now recognizing who I am in the industry. And I don't mean that to be a braggart or nothing like that, because I'm not, but I'm just saying like he understands that now I could be, like he's into it for a few years and he's like, now he calls and asks for advice. Like he's like, how do you make this? How do you do that? And he realizes that I could be a great resource. But you know, at the time when you're in it, you're just, that's my old man. He's half senile and he can't hear. You know what I mean? But like, you know? But after a while, when he gets away from me, he's like, man, man, maybe I should have been out in the shop with him when he was out in the shop and stuff.
Right.
But and those are all just hindsight, and I don't think there's any regret because I still think Levi's best days are to come. You know what I'm saying? It's not like we missed anything just because we didn't. But it's one of those things where, and I give him a lot of credit because he has this natural fear of horses, and he has to overcome that while he's learning to shoe horses and stuff. But he's in a great network of guys out there in Pennsylvania that are good people, and he's doing good. And I like to see him grow. And when you're away from someone for like 6 weeks at a time, then you can see that growth.
Right.
But and all my customers are like, so who's gonna what do your sons do? And I was like, they shoe horses. And they're like, why don't they shoe in New Mexico with you? And I was like, because they have this weird place anywhere else from New Mexico. It's called an economy, where like people exchange for money. Instead of chicken, eggs, and flagstone. You know what I mean?
And I was floored, to be honest, when I was like, when I started watching your videos and the quality that you turn out, and a lot of us young guys that are starting out, that are trying to figure it out, and we're looking for, especially in these days, we're using the internet to find something to look at, something to emulate, and they're like, oh yeah, he's in New Mexico, and I'm like, shit, well, I bet he makes a lot of money shoeing horses. And then my mentor was like, no. Like, no.
But don't you think like money is kind of like it is what drives everything, and no one can say that money's not important. And I would like to have more of it. I'm not saying that, but on the other hand, I think that, man, you gotta live life and have a purpose-driven life. A purpose. Like, there's so many people, and I'm not trying to dog on my brother, but my brother shoes horses, but my brother's a mechanic. And my brother won't admit that. But my brother can, like, whenever I've had trouble with my car, I could let him listen to it through the phone, and he could probably diagnose my car through the phone. But he shoes horses. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like, some people don't ever find their vocation. And my brother shoes horses because horseshoeing also is an entrapping thing because there's good money.
Yeah,
it's just like football. If you're good at football and when you're 38, you're not going to be able to walk without a cane.
Right.
But you still do it because the money was good.
Right. Well, I equate, I call it, what my buddies and we call it drugs.
Oh, it's
a drug because, there's that constant trying to get better. If you really love it, I think there's guys that get in it strictly for money, and I don't think they're super successful.
Oh,
you
they're
have to
bitter,
love it.
And then it's like, must be nice. Those are the guys that say must be nice. The guys that get into shoeing horses for money are the ones that, must be nice to have a podcast. They don't realize that you dropped a ton of dough on stuff that probably ain't going to pay you back.
Right.
But it must be nice.
Yeah, and it's like, and I've heard that, I'm in a college town, and I drove up to a gal's house, and I was sitting there, and I was trimming the horse, and she looked at my truck. She goes, "Must be nice."
Yeah.
I said, and she's like, and she, previous to that conversation, then she proceeded to, she's like, "Must be nice," and I was like, and she called me you're very privileged, and I said, how many hours a week do you work? And she goes, oh, I can't possibly work over 40 hours a week. Over 40 hours a week is too much for me. And I said, well, that's why you'll never have anything.
Oh, that's. And
how many hours a day do you spend perfecting your craft and just like under horses doing your job?
Endless. And all right, so I'll tell you just a quick story. We were up at the World Championships, and Mick Saunders comes from Australia. And we hit it off, and we really enjoy it because he's passionate about what he does, is like myself. And he's like, hey, I want you to come to Australia, and I want you to come on a work-related deal. And I was like, vacation. And so then he tells my son Levi, he goes, hey, yeah, I think Craig's going to come, your dad's going to come to Australia on a vacation kind of thing. And he looks straight at him. He goes, my dad doesn't go anywhere on vacation. He said, he's full of shit. You guys might get him over there to do some clinics, but he ain't going anywhere on vacation. And so, but my vacation is my vocation. And my wife, I'm not saying that she hasn't paid the price. She works way harder than me, but my wife, we've tried to keep everything parallel. Our family goes forward in the same direction, and that in itself is a huge blessing. To like, I'm glad that Levi's doing it. He's not in the exact state I am, but we're on a parallel mission. And when you come to our house, you kind of see that everything is hand in glove. Right. Like my wife does a lot of things that integrate with what I do, and I integrate with a lot of things that my wife does. And then Rachel and Bodie, they integrate a lot with what we're doing, but we want to do a lot of what they're doing. You know what I mean? And it's like, I think that the nuclear family is, the exact opposite of what communism is. So it's like, I think it's important. I think that's why churches are important. Whether you believe in God or not, church is important, and God is, you know what I mean?
Are you familiar with Jordan B. Peterson? Have you seen
him? He's a cool dude.
I think he said it best, and he's had a very, very, he was an agnostic for years.
Oh, I'm sure. I probably was, but I don't think God hates you for being agnostic.
No, but he...
Or even atheist.
Right. He literally said, he's like, I believe there's something out there, but and he kind of had this journey, right? Yeah. And now he's like, yeah, I'm a convert now, right? And he was talking about whatever is your hierarchy of needs, whatever is at the top of that pyramid serves as your God. If you cannot survive without a God, little g or big G, you must have something that drives your moral compass.
Without a doubt. And the more I do that, the more, you don't know how many times, we rely on a 2006 Freightliner truck that is a huge part of our business. Huge. It's a semi.
Right.
I couldn't afford a new semi because the semi doesn't make us any money. It's a means to an end. It gets us hard. So I rely on a 2006 Freightliner. I rely on people to work on it. I rely on so much. And I don't want to jinx it, but I don't think I'm going to jinx it. There's so many times that truck is broke down just after we got there, just after we got things done. And I think that we do help people, and we can laugh and say that I'm in a Blues Brothers thing, and I could say I'm on a mission from God. I could say all kinds of things, but I'm just saying that I do believe that we're trying, and we do pray the whole time we're in that truck that we get there.
I drove a Ford. I know.
and it's like, and people look at you. It's kind of funny to see people, because people, when you say you believe in God, there's a lot of people out there that
makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah, they're like, that's an ignorant fuck right there.
Right.
And they say that. You could see in their mind that it flips over, and they're like, well, just the fact that you say I believe in God, they're like, oh, you did away with all this information in the world. And I was like, well, it's unexplainable. Not only is it unexplainable, it's explained itself to me over and over and over again. Right. And I'm not saying that I don't cuss. I'm not saying that I don't sin. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying that you could call it God, you can call it the karma bus, you can call it whatever you want, but there's an order that wants you to be moral.
Right. Right. There is something inside each and every one of us, whether we follow it or not, we have a sense of right and wrong.
Yes.
Like every society out there, the most successful societies, even if you look I thought it was interesting, if you look at the Apache, they're down in New Mexico. That's their whole area.
Oh, yeah.
I studied them. I love that. I read a bunch of books on them, and it said a white man could ride into one of their villages, and you could ride right in and hang out, and they'd let you hang out, and you'd be fine. It was when you rode out and then it was all the bets were off.
Yeah.
But they didn't want trouble in their own village. They didn't cheat on each other.
Yeah.
There were rules. If a woman, it's funny, the Sioux were the same way. If a woman was done with her husband and wanted a divorce, not that I'm saying that's ideal, but if it was an ordered society, she would throw his stuff out of the teepee, and he went and found a new place to be if she had kids. And if he wanted to leave, so again, each society, their hierarchy, there is a moral compass within every society, whether people want to admit it or not. And without a higher power, there's no reason for morality.
No, and so in the horseshoeing world, I don't believe that I'm right, and I don't believe that I'm wrong. I just think that probably in the last 4 to 5 years, I've had this reckoning with the fact that I don't believe that healthcare is about making people healthy, and I don't believe the education process is about educating people to be better and smarter. Right. I think that those were bad vehicles, And I'm not saying that Western medicine hasn't discovered a lot of good stuff and it doesn't help people. I'm just saying that that's not where the big money is at.
One of the guys told me, I think it's 80% of people will get better no matter what you do.
The further you get away from the date that it happened.
Yeah.
And most lamenesses in horses, if a horse hurts themselves, all the shenanigans in the world probably isn't going to help them near as much as getting further away from the date in which that they stepped in a gopher hole and they sprang this or that. Chances are the further you get away from the date that they stepped in the gopher hole, is probably going to be the mending of the actual animal.
So, and I had a gentleman. He was actually the gentleman that developed the Coggins test.
Really?
He used to trim his horse, and it was kind of funny because I tell people, I'm like, that horse has made more money than any horse ever in any arena ever, and he never stepped foot outside of a cattle. Like, they had him in a pasture with cows.
Yeah.
But his blood is what they used as the controlled group for the Coggins test.
That's pretty interesting.
So, and he was a flea-bitten thoroughbred, but he said the rule in medical is treat them before they get better.
And I think that the farrier industry and as a trade is, I don't know. I think we're doing good. I think that education is doing good. I think things are coming up. But I think that there's so many outside factors. There's so much ignorance that is prevalent in the livestock industry and horses. And it's one of those things that the ebb and flow is like shoeing. There's way more money to have a horse that's lame than a horse that's sound.
Right.
And it's a disturbing fact, and people are like, well, that's not necessarily true. But it's sort of like the veterinarian industry, I think, wants to consume the farrier industry.
I would agree with that.
So right now, and people are like, well, there's no way veterinarians want to be farriers. And I was like, yeah, but if you create an equine podiatrist,
right,
you're a new wave. It's sort of like whenever in America, and I know this is probably controversial, but we kill off a lot of people in America with COVID, the vaccine, and everything, and then we import 20 million immigrants. So we water and dilute the whole American ideal of what Americanism is.
Your brain, well, and it's fascinating because it's not, and I don't think people get this, it's not immigration that's the problem. It's when you have people coming into the country who aren't coming here because they want to be a part of it.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, and the thing is like, what's really weird is if you just look back during 1776, everybody acts like technology changed the political landscape, but technology didn't change the political landscape one bit. It's big banks and commercial greed that wrecks any kind of freedom.
Right. Have you with the, I say this because we talk about social media being it's the new town hall.
Yes.
It's the new spot to tell your story, to tell what you want to do. And people always go, oh yeah, everybody's just, we're just so introspective now. We want everybody to watch us, and we selfies and all this stuff, right? And I'm a big reader, and I read journals. People are the same. We want to be remembered.
Yeah.
We feel we are always the hero of our own story.
I think so. And I think people like Jordan Peterson says, people don't often want to say that they were on the wrong side of history.
Yeah. And it's funny, you look at like 1938, Germany, or the Civil War. We all want to be on the Union side or on the side.
How many Germans come out of Germany and say, yeah, I was the guy that held the train cars open for the Jews to get into the train cars? It's like, no one's like, and we gathered around in Christmas, and I told this story about how I would hold open the railroad car.
No one wants
no one tells that story. Everybody's like, yeah, there we were surrounded, and we freed all these people off the train cars. But no one's like, yeah, I held the door open and tricked those people into thinking that they were going to go to Hawaii.
We were talking about this last night, and I think this is with COVID, with all of the things that we've seen over the last few years.
It makes me madder than a midget with a yo-yo.
I love that. So, but like, the thing that floors me, the thing that is most disturbing about the Holocaust second most thing disturbing about the Holocaust is that they walked onto the train freely.
Oh, but we did it. We did the same thing during COVID. We did the same thing. Like, I would get this eerie feeling when you were getting on the airplane and they would come and chastise you because you didn't have your mask up over your nose, and you're getting into a plane that has HEPA filters and we're all breathing the same air.
Right. So what do you think that's a breakdown of education?
Yes, without a difference.
Because I would argue that traditionally what education was designed to do, because most people did, my great-grandfather didn't go past the 6th grade.
But he probably did pretty well for himself.
Right. He could read, do sums, write, and had a basic knowledge of, history. And
yeah, but education's the single most number one thing that will get you very, very far is if you get taught and you get preached to the power of observation. Right. Observation. If you can observe, like I observe you and you see and you start to see highlights of what people, you have to observe. And so all the reading in the world, but if you're, and see, that's where we're at right now is when we walk back into the convention center, leaving here, 3 out of the 4 people that we pass will be looking at their phones and not observing the walls. Like, I'll bet you how many people could tell you that there was old school rivets put in the ceiling of the auditorium that's in there. You see what I'm saying?
Right,
like, how many people observe?
right.
How many people even know? Like, and it's like, I don't think that you're supposed to be a Marine to understand that, like, that guy over there could kick your ass. This guy over here couldn't.
Right.
This guy, this lady doesn't even. You
Right.
have to observe, and if you're not got the power of observation, there's so many people, like I say, out there that have never hit their vocation. So if you don't have the power of observation, how do you even know what your vocation is?
Right. Right.
And so that's why college has been a terrible place for probably, COVID did us all a favor to wake us up to the fact that people are just running people through college with really no education, and now they got $160,000 worth of debt, and they didn't get anything. They had 4 years, and we can blame it on the colleges, but really it was just the fact that it's socially acceptable to be unobservant.
Right. Well, and I think you could argue we are conditioned. I think education is more conditioning now. The idea behind education is not to educate you, but to give you the tools, the ability to observe, the ability to critically think.
Oh.
Because we see this in my generation and the generations coming up. It's like they can't think through a problem.
And so the people I think that really got a college education are the people like Bodie, my son, and Jim Quick. When they went to college, they always referred to people that they met to college because they always were networking. And Bodie will always say, yeah, I've got a buddy in college that does vinyl repair on this or that. And
Right.
I got a buddy in college. And I think most people who went to college that actually got a college degree probably networked more than, like, the professor was just
Right.
a dude trying to be, like you said it, is like, I want to be important.
Right.
But the people who went to college and got a college education, which is, I got a college education from my 2 boys, and I didn't ever go to college.
Right.
My 2 boys, because I learned a lot about music. Like,
Right.
I would have never, because college is a great network for, who do you think they market music to these days?
Right.
So, like, I learned all about different types of music. And then, like I say, my boys were the ones that taught me to get on social media.
Right.
My boys, and I realize those may not be great things that you learn from college, but because I taught them how to go to college, I was like, well, you don't want to condone your children drinking, but I would rather have my children learn how to drink with me.
Right.
And then not be passed out at a college party.
Right. What Jordan Peterson says, and it's probably one of my favorite, because I actually just had my first son, so I'm like in this brand new, like, trying to figure it out.
How old is your son?
He's 11, 12 weeks now.
Oh,
so he's
brand spanking.
Yeah, and you have to let your children do dangerous things carefully.
Yeah, without a doubt. I believe that.
But we have, again, going back to I believe our society is so sterilized. We drink filtered water. We drink food that's very, processed, controlled. We live in, not so much, I think, in the country, like we're very, like you and I are both rural areas, I think, and so we have a little bit more, I would say, freedom. We go around, we do a little bit different thing.
Yeah, but is it really a sin to take your child out of a car seat and feed him a sandwich when you're going down the road and then put him back in the car seat? Were you really planning on getting in a wreck?
Right.
Like, I don't ever plan on getting in a wreck. I don't.
Right.
But now we're like, if you don't have your seatbelt on, man, you're a bad person. And I'm thinking, that's bullshit. I said, you should wear your seatbelts to keep the law of averages under respect.
Right.
But I'm also saying, if you need to breastfeed your child, are you really a piece of shit if you breastfeed your child during a good stretch on the highway and then put him back? Well, what if you get in a wreck? No one's planning on getting in a wreck, and everybody's planning on being careful. But all of a sudden, we've made those people out to be an outlaw.
Right.
Is that really? Are you really an outlaw because you took your child out of a car seat and you breastfed them and then you put them back in there?
Right.
I find that hard to believe.
Well, I know I did. I grew up pretty old school, but I remember bouncing around the back seat, no seatbelt at all.
Who you fought over? Who got to lay in the back window?
Yeah. Or when we had them old campers.
Oh,
we
yeah.
all wanted to sit up in the.
Oh yeah, that was the coolest thing, is to be up there, and if they hit the brakes, you'd go right through that window and out under the. But the thing is like, and everybody wants to make laws and change things, and that's the whole thing with, like, getting organized. Like, that's one of the downsides of horseshoeing. Is a lot of horseshoeing is intuition. A lot of horseshoeing is like I always call horseshoeing nickels, dimes, and pennies. You fill up those paper wrappers full of nickels, dimes, and pennies, and you really can't be a good horseshoer until you almost got all those filled up, because you're like, I don't ever say, well, I got to see this horse go. I got to do this. I'm thinking, this is like that bay mare that I shod 4 weeks ago.
Right.
And then this is what happened. And so when you start having experiences like that, you're like, yeah, I can remember. I used to do a gelding that stood just like that, and this is what we did. And if it worked, then that's your experience helping you. But everybody's like wanting to do protocol. Like, if you do this or that. And I'm like, I don't think any horseshoer can tell you how to shoe a horse correctly. That's a good horseshoer. But I could tell you every horseshoer that is a good horseshoer could tell you how not to, because they're like, well, that didn't work, so I'm not going to do that. And that didn't work, and I didn't want to do so. But I think most of them aren't arrogant enough to say, yeah, I could fix that. But like, you talk to the old guys that are here at the convention, and they're like, They mostly, when they give you sage advice, it's where to stay away from, not where to go.
I would say that it's kind of funny because it all ties in, so observation, is useless without experience. And experience is useless without observation.
Yes.
You can't have
without
one or
a
the other.
doubt.
And I think that the hard part is, and I see this with young guys coming out, we come out of college and we want to make $150,000 a year and be in the top position of the job. And we don't understand that just because you go and do school or whatever, you don't have experience and you haven't observed enough to actually, like, there was a young guy that I was hanging out with last night, super nice dude. And he's like, dude, I think I'm getting to be a pretty good horseshoer. And I was like, I remember when I felt like that.
Oh, yeah, it's a very humbling. Like, I told my wife the other day, we had a conversation. I think I'm getting to be too old to shoe horses. And she's like, what, you mean physically? And I was like, no, mentally. I said, I think that almost all the horses that I shoe could probably be fixed with a good trim and a good just basic shoe. And I think their feet get better. And I said, I see so much crap getting pushed on the market, and people wanting this and people wanting that. And I find myself, when I'm talking to my customers, angling towards the more simple thing. And I'm thinking, am I angling towards the more simple thing because I'm lazy? Because I'm never above saying that I'm lazy. Or am I angling because I truly believe that I truly believe what I think is right through deduction and observation, but I'm coming to the same answer. So now I'm thinking, well, am I just that old dog that can't learn a new trick? But I also believe that most things don't get better without time. Like we said, the further you get away from a lameness issue, usually the better off you get. But Man, I just find that simplest is the best, and I also find that people the one thing that you have to become an expert on to be a farrier is study the disease of Munchausen by proxy, because all people want to have a significance, and most people get their significance with their animal through lameness. So they're like, I think my horse is lame, and you're like, no, it's not lame, and then you took away their significance.
I shoe for a gal, and her horses develop problems. There's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah, so you're shoeing the person's head, not the horse's feet. And then on the other side of the spectrum, I used to have a hard time with vet-farrier relations, and because I would tell people that I don't think that that's the direction we need to go. And then Chad Chance told me one time, he goes, you want to make all that go away? And I was like, yeah. And I was expecting him to give me some bullshit answer and stuff. And he says, just start your sentence off with, I think we can help this horse. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. So then I just started, like, if I disagreed, so the vet would say, yeah, we need to have a 2-degree wedge and rocker the toe. That fixes everything, even a bean, everything. and it's like, so the people would say, and if I started the sentence off by saying, well, I really think we can help this horse, then they didn't give a shit what I said after that. So it was a piece of cake. And so all they heard was, I think we could fix this horse. And as long as you have the confidence of the people, because I do believe we could fix this horse. And whenever people come to me, they don't realize that they're not coming to me. But with what you found out last year when you came to the convention, is then all of a sudden your customers don't realize it, but they have a whole encyclopedia of references. Because let's just say, all right, so right now I'm like, man, we are going to change the way we're going to do media for the WCB. I could say, Caleb, those mics were badass that you had. So I've just opened my networking up.
Right.
And so just by coming to like Farrier deals, all of a sudden you're like, I remember Chad. Chad's a reining daddy. So like whenever I get a reiner, I'm like, hey Chad, could you, and I could take Reader's Digest version of reining horses through Chad.
Right. And
so they're not getting me, they're getting Chad Chance when they get me. They're getting Caleb when they get me.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like, so the number one question that I get when we do a lot of public things for events and horse owners and real green horseshoers and horse owners and stuff, and they're always asking me that tricky question, which is a tricky question. They ask, how can you tell if you got a good farrier or not?
That's it, yeah.
And that's a politically landmine that you don't want to go down, because I'm not out there to shit on my brethren. I'm not out there to say, well, get rid of that hack, I'm there. But I am there to lift up my brethren. And to do that, I tell people, I said, well, in a roundabout way, the way to find out if you have a good farrier or not is you have to ask them about continuing education.
Yes.
Because you don't want a dentist that says, I don't need no learning no more. I'm good.
And he's missing 3 teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you want your farrier is you want to just kind of in a nonchalant way ask if they ever go out, or just bring up the fact that you heard about the WCB, and have you ever been to those events? Do you go to events? Because you want a farrier that goes out, I would say a minimum of 3 times on a 6-month cycle.
Right.
To a local association that may be a day trip.
Right.
To a national convention once a year that may be a 3 or 4 day trip.
Right.
And if people are like, well, I don't have time for that, then that gives you your answer.
Right.
And it's like cut and dry. It's cut and dry. And it's not like, I'm not talking about that. I'm not saying that they can't go to a glue-on clinic or this or that clinic.
Right.
I'm just saying, if you go to a continuing education, you are forced to challenge some ideas that you have in your head. Just like you said, you had a little roundtable discussion in here last night, and you're forced to, even if I'm a better debater than you,
right?
It forces you to say, well, fucking Craig's not going to get on the upside of me next time we get together.
Right. It pushes you.
Yeah.
It makes you, and we talked about that, like, having some friends when you're going through, like I'm working on my journeyman process.
Yes.
And so you need friends. But you need them to heckle you a little. If you're being lazy and you haven't been in the shop for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
They need to, and they're like, dude, you're sucking a little bit.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And it was great. I had a little deal, like, I'm 59.
Right.
And so, like, probably in the last 4 years or so, I deal with mortality in my mind a lot. Like,
right.
Getting older, you're not 40 anymore.
Right.
Because I was 40 forever. I was 40 for 50 years of my life, right? And so when you're 59 and your mortality's setting in and you're realizing that, like, when you get in the competition arena, you're like, you work really hard and there's young kids that can keep up with you with very little effort.
Right.
And so that's all good. So like, we get through Calgary, and Chris Madrid asked me, he goes, you had made talk about maybe doing that jackpot shoeing at the convention. Would you want to do it? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, well, I want to do it. And I said, well, I want to do it, but I want to be serious about it. And he goes, well, all right. So we practice 3 days a week.
Right.
Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And we get together at 5:30 so we could start our day at 7:30.
Right.
And but it was amazing because he's 19 years younger than me. He's got a good eye. He's got a good education. He's got a good work ethic, everything. Chris has been like WCB champ, I don't know, 7, 8 times.
Right.
And he's been AFA champ 4 times or something like that. He's just a well-rounded farrier, and he's kind of like the offshoot of what I thought embodied the WCB psyche, right?
Right.
And so then we get together and we're practicing, and you just realize how far behind the 8 ball you are and how far you've let things slip. And a lot of those things could have been mortality, like getting older and everything else, but a lot of them was just slipping.
And being around your peers. I have guys that are around me that shoe horses, and they went to shoeing school 10, 15 years, 30 years ago, and never went and did anything else. So now they're probably shoeing worse than when they started, when they came right out of school with no experience. And it's because they didn't get, it's not, and I stress this because I think it's something you hear, but they pick on guys that go to competitions a lot. The guys that are trying really hard, and they hammerheads or whatever the insult is, or chest beating or whatever. And it's like, no, I'm not going to a competition to show everybody how badass I am. I'm going to have other guys critique me, and then I see how good someone else is. I come here and I see these guys, and I'm like, holy crap, man, they're phenomenal. I could be better.
Oh, without a doubt. The thing is education in the competition world, education through the competition world, is a lot like, I don't think there's a single person. There's some terrible people out there, but not very many people go to a comedy show to see a guy not be funny.
Right.
Like, people don't go to be, I hope this guy sucks, man. I hope he, because sucking at comedy is like, that's why those guys kill themselves. That's why those guys are bipolar, is because they're like, be funny. You can't just be funny on command. So those guys live a terrible, but I'm getting off on a rabbit hole. The thing is that no one goes to a competition. No one wants to see a bad go. No one. Right. I guarantee you, the guys that are having a bad go, you'll almost see people flock around. They're like, they give them a little guidance. And so, like, no one really goes to see someone have a bad go at a competition. So when you have a bad go, you're probably going to get more help than you could ever even realize.
I came to this convention last year, first time, 8 years of cold banging. I thought that the pretty little thing on the end that's pointed was just to balance it out when I used my turning cams, right?
Yeah.
And Brian Strelo and Justin Frank were running the little booths.
The hands-on.
The hands-on stuff. And I had maybe pulled 5 clips in my life. And I was with Paul McGann, and Paul goes, get your ass over there and sign up for every slot that's open.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I'm like, oh God. And then Not to mention.
Yeah, but what went through your head is exactly why those people call it headbanging, because you're like, God, now I'm going to have to show everybody that exactly what I don't know, because you're not going to fool anybody here.
No.
There's no one here that's saying, like, yeah, I drew that clip, and I just having a rusty day. Everybody knows that you don't draw clips. So the reason that you suck at drawing clips is because you don't draw clips, and that's not the issue. But you have to get over that animosity of like, and Levi's going through it right now, is everybody thinks they can go around the suck.
Right.
And you have to walk right through it. And there's no going around it. And people are like, well, that's a negative way to look at it. I was like, no, the suck is like, you have to draw shitty clips to draw mediocre clips. And then you have to go through the whole thing of drawing mediocre clips to drawing good clips. And then to draw really, really consistent clips, you had to be able to draw the mediocre clip. You know, there's no, there's like, people are like, well, it's my methodology. And it's like, that's bullshit. You have that, the only way that this trade can be taught is, and people are going to argue, but the only way you learn how to pull a shoe off a horse's foot is to pull 1,000 shoes off a horse's foot. Then you get a knack of pulling a shoe off a horse's foot. And the only way you could trim the right side of a frog is you trim 1,000 right sides of the frog, and you start to get a feel of it. And it's 1,000 times. And so PC, politically correctness, has wrecked the best institute in the whole wide world, which is the worshipful company of Farriers has the apprenticeship program and the education program in the UK. You have a 4-year apprenticeship, in which it basically is slave labor under the tutelage of a craftsman.
Right. So, which that is probably one of the oldest ways to teach anyone in history.
Whether you're going to be a framer.
Right.
They don't just tell you to start cutting up lumber and then they wreck 24 tons of lumber to frame out a house. You get menial, shitty jobs until you learn that you could do the menial, shitty jobs. And then you get to have a little bit more. And if you never get to that, then you'll drift off to being cleaning dishes. And basically, that's the thing that we do in America, is we never say it's all right to bounce around. And so now we've just got this society where craftsmanship is considered, it's just like a dying art. And it's not a dying art. It's not a dying trade. It's just that you have to have people who realize that going through the suck is normal.
Right. And you have to have, and it really is true. I forget who told me this originally. And it's not original to him either. But you have to check your ego at the door.
Oh, there's no egos. That the people who say it's chest banging are egos. The people who are entered up out there are exactly like you. They're like, the look you said that was perfect, because it's like, I got to go put my name on the sign-up sheet. And then you know what putting your name on the sign-up sheet is. Then you actually have to put the tongs in your hand. And then you know there's 14 people standing around that are, you're the guinea pig. You're like, I'm gonna draw some clips. And I suck at drawing clips, or I'm going to make a trailer. I suck at making trailers. And there's 14 people, and 3 of those people are ones that didn't sign up, and they're going to say that was just about him showing off.
Right. And the thing is like, and I would argue this too, and to a certain extent, especially in my case. So I had YouTube videos out there of my work, right? And I walked up to Strelo, and I signed up. Strelo is so funny, because Strelo he is so serious when he's like teaching, and like when he's in the moment, he is serious. And then so I just assumed he was super serious until we got outside of that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy crap, this guy's funny.
Oh yeah.
Right. So, and we had a great, and like he's fun. Like I love hanging out with him. Oh yeah. But so I sign up, and he goes, "What's your name?" I was like, "It's Caleb Erickson." He goes, "YouTube guy."
Yeah.
Fuck. Like, there's no, I can't bullshit my way. I can't, they know. And just to your point, they know when you walk up there, the minute your body position, your hammer swing, your tong hand, everything you're doing, they know, right? I looked like a monkey fucking a football the first time I got around a horn. And on bad days, I still look that way.
No, and the thing is like I have a lot of people that have helped. Like another thing. It takes a team. You have to have a team. part of your team is your family. You have to invest in your family. But there's so many people who use their family as an excuse. They're like, I got kids. And you're like, everybody's got fucking kids, dude.
Right.
Get up earlier or stay up later.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like everybody's got a family. Everybody's got a wife. Because people who blame their family usually have a snowmobile. And they're like, I got a family. But yet they spend 6 hours on the snowmobile.
Right.
Well, what about your fucking family when you're on your snowmobile? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's like the whole
priority.
Yeah. And so having said that, it's like you have to have a team and you have to have friends. You got to have a friend, if you ain't got a friend, you're fucked.
Right.
But you got to have a friend, someone that makes shoes, someone that you can bounce things off of, and if you don't, I'm sorry, but it does take a team. And so you can't do it yourself, and you can't do it in the closet and then come out of the closet. You can't be like, all right, I'm going to learn how to draw clips. And then I'll just show up and sign up on the sign-up sheet and impress the fuck out of these people. Yeah, right. That doesn't work either.
No. And to your point, I've heard this excuse. Oh, that's a long drive.
Oh.
And you're in the western states. I was explaining to somebody the other day. He goes, oh, you're in Idaho. You're right next to Utah. Just a hop, skip, and a jump. I'm like, actually, it's like 10, 11, 13 hours into Utah.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So I know New Mexico's the same way. So you have guys, I've heard guys driving from Nevada, Arizona.
We had people come from Canada. We had 2 girls. We had a girl, and for the life of me, but hopefully she won't see this. But anyway, it was like 2 gals come from Canada. One drove, the other one flew. But we're talking, I followed her process. Her journey on Facebook. She's like, yeah, we're in Idaho. You know, we're here, we're there. And I was saying, she's coming to a contest in Edgewood. But if you want to, you will.
Yeah.
And so what you have to listen to is all the back noise of the people who weren't and they wouldn't.
Right.
And they're like those people. And the fray is what you listen to, but I people say you have to entertain. So I try to entertain. Like I have a ton of bullshit whenever I do a clinic. I have a ton because I got to get people invested and I pay a lot of attention to body language. Like people, there's like, and I make fun of people. Like I'll walk up to somebody and make fun of them when we're out there competing and you watch people standing around. And if you see a person with their arms folded, I walk up and unfold their arms. They're like, you're going to learn a shitload more without your arms folded. And they're like, right. They look at you and they're like, what? And I'm like, it's true, dude. I'm just trying to be nice. And then maybe we might become friends of that, or they'll be like, Craig's an asshole and he unfolded my arms. But I believe like people leaning back at a clinic. That's you're in bad shape.
You're not engaged.
And every once in a while, I'll throw a fuck out there. And I'm not a cusser as far as sexuality. I'm not a sexual person as far as that goes.
Right.
But I do throw a fuck out there and a shit and a goddamn out there every once in a while to get people to straighten up. And
there is use.
Yes, to get people engaged. And so, because you're trying to get people engaged, you're trying to make people feel. And I'm not trying to make people feel like I feel really bad, but out of the history of my life, a lot of people came up and said, man, you changed my life. It was because you scalded me. And when I'm like, that's a terrible thing to change somebody's life.
Right.
I feel bad about that. But then there's a lot of people that come up and they're like, it was good, but you know, you're just trying to shove people off the fence. That's all you're doing is you're just running down, just pushing people off you get on one side or the other, but get invested.
Right. Well, and so I passed my CF in September, and my buddy's like, cool, you can have a couple days, enjoy that accomplishment, and now we're on to the next thing.
Yes.
Like, right? But I failed the first time. I get, and a lot of people, they're afraid of failing. Failure is not permanent. It's only permanent if you quit.
Yeah, quitting's a bad word, but failure is not. And the thing is, like I always try to put people at ease. Like there's a funny story is like Mark Milster and I were on the team for quite a few times, and then the AFA changed the rule to be on the American Farriers team, which was basically the flagship team of the AFA. You had to be a CJF. Well, neither one of us were CJFs. And so we were like, we wanted to be on the team the following year. We had qualified on it the following year, but they weren't going to let us go to England if we didn't get our CJF. So we raced around, And at that time, we didn't do any cheating. We didn't do anything, but we both passed our practical with flying colors. It wasn't a big deal. But the written, so we would have, every time we had a team practice, we would have an examiner, and the examiner would administer the test. Right. And he didn't help us. He didn't cheat, but that was considered, now you have to have it be in a format.
Right.
But we would go somewhere, and I took the test so many times, I could remember. I was like, "What test are we taking today, Jim?" And then it'd be like, "Test C," and I'd be like, "Test C." I memorized all. I took it. I failed it so many times, and I paid every time I took it, but I failed it. And I was like, "You failed it so many times that you actually passed it." But there's people who take it on the chin. They're like, "I want to pass it all in one fell swoop," and you're like, "Dude, don't that."
Right.
Take it as recon. Go out there, take your recon, and then come back. And they're like, but it isn't a badge of honor. I got my CJF, and I got my CF. I don't know if I passed it more times than you or less times than you, but I got my CF.
And they don't. And every guy, Todd Hannell was talking about this the other night, it floors me. The guys, it is emotionally floors me. Not just it doesn't just floor me. It emotionally floors me how wonderful the guys in the AFA are. So Todd Hannell has a study group 4 days a week. He does an hour-long study group on his own time, no pay, no nothing, just because he wants to help guys get through the test.
Well, and it keeps him sharp, and it keeps him connected, and it keeps him pertinent, so it's a good deal for everybody.
Right, but he does that, and he will literally look at you and he will say, nobody cares what you passed it by. No one will ever ask you, did you pass it by an inch or a mile? You passed it. Move. Don't quit. Don't quit.
And the best thing about it is, so let's move this whole thing over to the bar tonight. Right. The bar. Let's just set up. We're there at 8 o'clock at night, and the discussion will come up whether the CJF test is worth a shit or not. If the CJF is the beginning of communism. If the CJF test has got any relativity to everyday shoeing. Does the CJ, everything. And so, but this is what you can do. It's like, there'll be a hater in there, and they'll be like, that test is dumb. And the first question out of this person's mouth is, did you take the test?
Right.
Yeah, and I didn't pass it. So, but the validity in the room is, and this is why I tell people to pass it, is if you take the CJF test and you pass it, when we have those arguments about whether the CJF test is this or that, if you say, well, I think they could do this, and it might be criticism. Right. That everybody in there, well, Caleb, did you take your CJF? Yeah, I took my CJF 3 years ago. Then all of a sudden, you have the right to bitch about it. Right. You have, and it is a badge of honor to bitch about the CJF test if you pass your CJF. Right. But if you haven't, everybody in the room is like, well, you're a fucking hater. So don't be a hater. Just take the test. It doesn't matter if it has one bit of aptitude or one bit of relevance or it has all the relevance in the world. Just take it, pass it, and don't be a hater. And then that way we can all just start to move forward. Right.
Well, I failed my first horse in the CF, right? And I had, Jesse Wilson from Washington was my tester.
He's a
legit dude.
Yeah.
And I scored really well on my trim. I was good. I just ran out of time. And I said, fuck, it was a hard foot, one of them feet that, goes like this and then hooks really late, and I hate those feet. And I struggled with them, right? And I got that horse and I didn't pass. And I said, I can blame the horse. We had to drug the horse. I can blame the fact that the horse was drugged. I can blame the fact that it was a bad foot, that the horse hadn't been trimmed in 4 months. I can blame all of that. But the reality is I didn't have the skill.
That is the reality.
I have to check my ego and go, I didn't have the skill. And I'm almost happier I didn't pass it then and get by on the skin of my teeth. I took the journeyman and I made some dumb mistakes. I got an 80. So I literally missed exactly how many questions I'm allowed to miss, right? But I knew it.
Yeah.
The questions I missed was because I didn't read it right.
You're going too fast, whatever.
Yeah, but it wasn't, and that's the thing about all of this, all of the shoeing, all the things that we do. Life.
Yeah, but the CJF test is very relevant. I think the CJF is a good test. I think it's really good. Everybody says that's not everyday shoeing, but God knows what people do without adult supervision.
But if you can't perimeter fit a foot, anybody can back it off the fucking toe.
Yeah.
But if you can't, and I'm what do they say? The greatest sinner is the greatest convert. I am the greatest. I have done everything that you shouldn't do shoeing horses.
Oh yeah.
And so therefore, I know intention. That's what it teaches.
Yeah, and it also teaches you pressure.
Right.
It's like after you pass your CJF test, when you go and you hang out with a vet and he's throwing weird ideas or something, you don't get all nutted up. Right. And because you're expected to perform. It's sort of like it's exactly like the gal we were talking about that I shot for the first time, right? I don't know her. I don't know what to expect, and I'm 59 years old, but I'm expected to go out there and get 4 shoes, 2 sliding plates, and shoe the front, and that's what she wanted from me.
Right.
Well, some people get nutted up just with that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like so. The CJF test is everything. CJF is also a fraternity, like I said, of a networking. You already referenced Todd Hanil, 6 times in this conversation. Well, that's a great, great, great reference. That's someone you can network with.
Right.
That's someone you could talk to. And the thing that when people come out the other side is almost like a baptism. They're like, man, the people were so nice. It was like, I know all these people and the rite of passage that I went through and I feel dumber now than I did before I started the CJF test, which is what the whole intent of it was.
Right.
Because I've taken a CDL test for truck driving, and the whole intent that's what made me see the light on the CJF is it's like, you just have to realize that you're driving 80,000 pounds of shit that you can't stop. And as long as we get that beat into your head, we don't care about you being a good truck driver or a bad truck driver. We're just trying to make sure that you know that you're out there and you're not going to be able to stop this thing once you get it rolling.
Right.
And it's like the test is like, do no harm. And everybody's like, well, that's a loose term, but it's like the CJF test is like, man, just get through that horse without doing any harm. And then you realize how much you don't understand. Right. Now you're enlightened. If you're enlightened, hopefully that pursues you to keep the education process going.
Well, and I think we've beat it around the bush a little bit, but the one word that describes everything we've talked about is community. And as a country, we've lost that.
Well, I think we're getting it back. I think we're on the uptick, but I do think community is huge. And so I was always trying to promote the WCB. I was always and when I say that, I was like trying to make it bigger.
Right.
And people were giving me some ideas, and I had some good ideas to do a pilot for a TV show, right?
Right.
Well, the thing is I went on the TV show Forged in Fire.
Yeah.
I was on there.
What season?
Season 2, episode 2.
Okay.
So, when I went on there and I saw the production and I saw there was lots of stuff on that show that I was like, alarming bells went off. Like they have 5-minute epoxy and they have 24-hour epoxy. But if the go is only 1 hour long, why would you have 24-hour epoxy on a show that was 1 hour long? Why wouldn't you just have 5-minute epoxy?
Right.
All right. So because they want to see you have some problems. They want to see you screw up.
Right.
All right. So
drama.
Yeah. So I was going to do this pilot for the WCB, but I decided to can it because I think that having a TV show would kill our community, kill our camaraderie, kill all the things that were good about the WCB. So let's just say we were a hit for 2 years on TV.
Right.
We would have nothing after it was over.
Right.
We would have nothing. So it was like, so that, again, going back to the whole money thing. Yeah, money's great, and it would be great to be famous, but did we make an impact on the Farrier world, or did we just give some people some drama for 2 years and then wreck our community?
Right. Right.
Good.
Right. I mean, and it's kind of crazy to think about because, so I'm on the social media side and so finding, reality TV show, we all know, you watch Duck Dynasty, we know. They're not all. It
has to have drama, otherwise people don't get into it.
Right. But I think we're coming back around. We talked a little bit about this, before we got started, and I'm noticing that videos, podcasts, things like that, authenticity is valued now.
Oh, without a doubt.
Because we've had so much fake, we've had so much drama, we've had all this stuff, and what people really want is just an authentic, good person. That's really what we're all looking for.
Oh, and authenticity on social media is a jagged edge. So like, probably one guy that I really think like walk the walk, talk the talk was the John Wayne of the horseshoeing world is Edward Martin. And I was fortunate enough to meet Edward. I wouldn't go so far as to say I was good friends with Edward. I think that Edward liked me enough to scold me. He liked me enough to school on me, but I would not say that I was an intricate, but Edward was bigger than life. So I don't know as if anybody knew Edward in a personal way, but whenever I get on social media, there's things that I do on social media where I'm thinking, if Edward lived during social media, he would be mad at me. And then there's things that I do, I think Edward would be proud of me. But I tried to live by that standard, but it's a new frontier, so you don't really, I screw up as much as anybody on social media.
Right.
And I need to retract things. And then there's other things where I think I hit it out of the park, but like we're living in a new era. So like sometimes I'm like, I don't know if Edward would get through that gauntlet. And then I'm wondering, would he get through it? You see what I'm saying?
Right,
and then, so those are the kind of what would Jesus do moments, that you're doing, because you have social media is like, holy cow. Like sometimes I go down a rabbit hole and I fight with someone that I shouldn't have never ever went down the rabbit hole.
I really enjoy those, by the way. I read everyone.
But you see what I'm saying? And I'm trying to be authentic, and I'm trying to think of like, man, Edward, if he lived during social media, would he have done that? Would he? And no one does. Like, and there's other heroes like Jim Keith, where I think that Jim Keith was on the ass end of it, and Jim Keith is like saying, I don't want to mess with social media.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
But I think that he's still bigger than life. I just think that it's like, those are things that I wonder if I'm waving the flag for the wrong reason, and then some days I'm wondering if I'm waving the flag for the right reasons.
Well, and I'm kind of it's fascinating because of I on the marketing side. So people will say things like, "Well, I don't want bad comments on my."
No, I
post.
don't.
And I know you don't, but I don't want bad comments, and I've had people comment on it, and I said, you understand that bad press is still good press. Sometimes bad press, unfortunately, is better than good press, and so
it's faster.
It's faster. Bad news travels fast, man. Yeah. And I've seen, like, watching your page, when you comment back to someone or someone makes a really dumb comment, and we've all done it. We've said something stupid, and then you respond to that person. When I respond to someone that makes a stupid comment on one of my videos or whatever, I respond to it in the sense that I'm probably not going to change that person's mind, because they've decided what they think about my video or my post or whatever. Yeah. But the other 20 people that come and read that, maybe they'll read his comment and read my comment and maybe think about it. And back to what we've talked about the whole time, they'll observe.
Yeah, that's what you're hoping. And you're hoping that you make sure that, because people say circle, click, cult, this and that, and those are probably all correct words, but you really, like, you can't appeal to everybody. And then the haters, it's sort of like every once in a while the barefooters feel like they want to dig in on the WCB page. And I believe in trimming horses. I believe in barefoot is the best possible route to go if possible.
Right.
But it's also like one of those things where the reason you don't see people that often barefoot in the airport is because they don't know what they're going to experience where they go. So they wear shoes. And it's the same thing with how I believe shoeing. If a horse has a job, because a horse doesn't have a job in the wild. They eat and they kind of hang out and they do what they want to do. They try to stay alive. But as soon as
they don't go up hills, they go nap of the earth, right?
And cows usually aren't where horses want to go, so you have to force a horse to go to get a cow.
Right.
All those things. But regardless, the barefooters will dig in on our page and they'll be like, yeah, and I've been told this, and so I have to ward them off because I'm like, I understand that you believe barefoot is best, and that's good, but we believe that shoes are an option.
And they're an option that I've had that happen where they, and I mean, and they are some of the most convicted, like very convicted about their
without
opinion.
a doubt, because well, the thing is if you're divorced once, that doesn't mean you turn gay.
Right.
So if you have a bad Farrier, why do you just like, shoeing's bad? Maybe you did have a bad Farrier. Maybe you need to try and find a more educated Farrier, but it's not like Farriers are bad, so I'm barefoot. It's sort of like I got stung in a marriage once, so I'm gonna be gay now. It's like that doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Well, and I rules, in my opinion, very few things are absolute. They only certain things, like you walk up to, we see this, right? Because I shoe a horse one time with a certain kind of shoe, and I think I'm doing the best I can for him. And maybe I come back 6 weeks, or maybe it's 2 cycles later, you're 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 18 weeks later, and you're like, shit, I don't think that's what he needs. Like you start to see a problem develop.
Yeah, you got to be open to do a 180. You have to, you're like, man. And that's what's so cool about horses is sometimes you can make a mistake and the horse can make up for your mistake and it'll allow you to go another direction. You're like, well, I need to make them higher on the inside. And then you come back and you're like, no, got to make them higher on the outside. Rebound. And the horse is like, yeah, dummy, thank you. And you can rebound. And there's a lot of that's very unforgiving. But there's a lot of that goes on that no one ever sees the mistakes. You rebounded and you re-entered up and you got it fixed. And that's what makes you not be so absolute. Because if you're absolute, you usually, but horses make up for 3/4 of your mistakes.
Right. That they're sound in spite of us.
In spite of us, not because of us. And that's the same way with owners. Owners are like, I give this horse this much salt and this much potassium, and all this stuff. And they're like, and that's why he's got a shiny coat. And the horse is like, no, I like eating that fence post over there, and that's why I got a shiny coat.
So I want to talk about, because your family founded the WCB. You were one of the driving forces for that. How did that come about? Talk a little bit about the truck too, because that is probably one of the coolest trucks.
It's kind of a long story, but I'll do the Reader's Digest. I was pissed at the AFA, and they had a general membership meeting, and I walked in and I said, "Hey, we don't have horseshoeing going on in this. We got a bunch of sales and a bunch of bullshit, but we don't have horseshoeing." And when you put and everybody clapped, everybody was happy. And so at the end of the general membership meeting, a bunch of the old guard came up and said, well, you think you're so fucking smart, you should probably run for president. And I was like, all right, I will run for president. But I was a hothead, and I admit I was a hothead. So I said, I'll run for president. Well, long story short, I became president. And then after I became president, the old guard was kind of worried about me. Because it was no different than Trump's going to get us in a war.
Right.
And he didn't.
Right.
And it was like they were worried. So with good respect. And so I got to talking to Walt Taylor. And Walt Taylor's like, and it still exists. There's still a rift, but a lot of people don't like competition. And so you have an association, and a lot of people don't like us. And I was like, they have the FIA, Farrier Industry Association, and that's subcontracted by the people who sell products.
Right.
So that's a branch of the AFA. Right. Not really a branch, but it's subcontracted to them, right? So Walt had suggested, he goes, well, you ought to try and why don't we try and make a Farrier's competition, like a competition where you are a member, and then that way it takes the division out of the association so it could focus on its main course, right? Mm-hmm. So I agreed with him because at that time competition was broken. And I suggested it. And then when I was done being president, I put in a proposal to make, basically it wasn't called the World Championship Blacksmith. It was going to be like this competition association where we went around the country, had local contests, and then we would have the big shindig at the AFA convention.
Right.
Well, they were like, that's stupid, it'll never work. And I was like, I was devastated. So I was like, well, I'm going to go it alone. So without any help from anybody, we basically we kicked it off and we called it the Super Clinic. And I called in all the favors I had with people from Mark Milster to Shane Carter, Jim Keith, Billy Crothers. All these people came and you became a member and you got the clinic, and the clinic was our seed money to get the WCB going. And they all kicked in, and they all saw the vision, and they all helped, and I could never thank them enough for all that to happen. And then we got a truck and a trailer, and we got a circus tent, and we went around the country, and we did that. And then I was losing friends, and I was losing people because the setting up the competition was so intense that it was just like people would be like, man, I can help, but I can't help this much. And I was like, yeah, I understand. So we went about 3 or 4 years with the circus tent, and then I was like, we got to figure out something better. So then we got a semi-trailer, a van line semi-trailer, and we put the actual forges in the bed of the semi-trailer, and we chopped it, and the side doors were literally the roof. So the side doors were put on hinges, and the forges are on the floor of it, and then I got a giant grain blower that blows for all the forges, and then the doors open up. Well, it took me 6 hours to string lights in a circus tent, but if I put the lights in the doors, they were already mounted. So then when we open the doors, we have the lights, everything set up, and we can set up in 4 hours and we can tear down in an hour and a half. So it was just incredible time saving, and we could do things fast and efficient, and we could take, since we really don't make any money, but it's a church and we stay in the black.
Right.
And so what you find out from things is if you're turnkey and you don't bitch, you could be like, people who are high maintenance very seldom get asked back to big venues. So like when we go to the Midwest Horse Fair, all most places have to give us is electricity and a square footage of what we take, our footprint, and we can set up and be self-sufficient. Well, that's very lucrative to people that run outside exhibitions and stuff like that. That's lucrative. If you don't need like, well, we need this support, they're like, man, it better be very advantageous for us to be there. But if all we need is a footprint and electricity, they're like, you see what I'm saying?
Right.
So then we could go around to these horse expos and stuff like that, and it's a two-headed snake. The goal is to do what you're trying to do with your podcast, is educate people and teach horseshoers how to shoe horses.
Right.
And when I'm educating people, I'm kind of kicking a lot of farriers in the pants, because people come up all the time when we're at a horse expo or something like that and say, what's a good farrier? And they expect me to say, these people right here, these are the best farriers. These are farriers. And I do believe that. I believe, oh, these are the best farriers. But I also believe that you question your farrier and just say, hey, kind of beat around the bush and see if he's even heard of a certification. Has he ever heard this? Has he done anything that wasn't online? Because you cannot learn this trade online.
Right.
It's a hands-on trade.
It's a feel.
Yes, it's a feel thing. So you have to go and you have to do exactly what you did with Brian Strelo. Is you have to go and you're like, man, I can't even hit the same fucking place twice with my hammer. And you're disgusted. But if you don't know that you have to walk through the suck, then you're going to be an online expert couch jockey that thinks that everybody's a dumbass.
That's just so. Well, I'm pretty excited about it because you've been talking about it online. But walk us through. You're now expanding. You bought a property.
So next door to us, since 9/11. Small airports have kind of taken a hit. It's like small airplanes, like personal airplanes are like, they're not on the uptick. They
Right.
might be holding steady, but they're not on the uptick. So we live in New Mexico, we live in an air park where you fly your plane right to your house, right? And so there's the where they had the hangars, they had room for growth. Well, that 7.5 acres sat there empty forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And so I asked the guy, I said, how much you want for that? So we got 7.5 acres of commercial land, and it's right next to our house. So what I wanted to do is, I'm really excited, and I don't know as if we'll be the first to do it, but I know we're going to get it done, is when you travel around the world, it's weird. Think about this, though. America, the United States of America, is the biggest nut to crack as far as equestrians go. So there's more money in equestrians in the United States of America than any other country. We're the biggest. So like when you have, like, so if you
I didn't know that.
If you come up with a new sports boot, if you come up with anything, you want to try and get it marketed in America.
Right.
All right. So you go all over the world. You go to Germany. They have a national smithy. So if you were to go to Germany, they have a national smithy. Switzerland has a smithy. Right. England has several smithies. And we're talking buildings, national buildings that are dedicated to the craft of shoeing horses.
Right.
We have the #1 market in America.
And we don't
have one smithy anywhere.
Wow.
So I wanted to make a national smithy, which is dedicated to education, to where we have events and we can sub it out to people. When I say sub it out to people, let's just say we just saw Chris Gregory in there. Yeah. Chris Gregory's got to hitch his wagon to an association if he wants to do a clinic or something like that. Well, you could just do it. And we have the building, we have the facility, everything. Caleb wants to do a seminar on podcasts, on whatever. You could do it, and we have the facility so that you can do it.
Right.
And so it's a national smithy, and I think it's like long overdue. It's dumb that we don't have one yet.
Right.
And we have probably the most equestrians in the whole wide world. We have the highest paid horseshoers in the world. We have and I'm not bragging, that's just a fact.
Right.
And we don't have a national smithy. So like, and when I say, for people who are ignorant on that, it's like a blacksmith shop we're going to have 16 forges. I want to have like the Hall of Fame where, like, here's another thing, is if you don't have a national smithy, that means you don't have a brick and mortar wall. If you don't have a brick and mortar wall, whenever you have museum artifacts that our legends of our industry make, you have nowhere to hang those artifacts, or nowhere to set those artifacts, or nowhere to put them on a table.
Right. So you're losing history.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's all just going by the wayside, and there's dead people that made a huge contribution to our industry that aren't probably recognized. And the AFA, bless its heart, is done a lot, but they are and they might see, that's another thing, is like I can wag the dog with the tail by, like, if I threaten to make a national smithy, maybe the AFA will.
Right, and then we'd have two.
And what would be wrong with that?
Nothing. And and it's just crazy. This was just amazing, because I really wanted people to be able to see this side, because people don't see this side.
Oh, it's
horse owners don't see this.
Well, we need it, and we need to have and like, I was considered, when I was AFA president, somewhat of a socialist, because I thought that we needed to have mandatory accreditation to be a farrier. Because I think it's time in our life to have where you flunk out a septic tank cleaning school and you decide to become a farrier is not, like, we've moved past that.
Right. I see this with a lot of people. They don't view it as a profession.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's weird is both my sons have been to 4 countries, 5 countries. I've been to countries all over the world, and it's all because of being a farrier. And it's like, everybody thinks that you got a piece of straw hanging out of your mouth, and you're sitting on the tailgate of a '76 Ford, and you're just a good old boy.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, wealthy people, if you can make their foot problems go away, the sky's the limit.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it's like anything. Health
Sound horses sell.
Yes. And it's like, so it's like having a national smithy and I want to get it to where it's way beyond me, because like my personality is very polarizing. So when I don't want people to come or not come because of me. I want to get it to be where I'm so abstract that we have success. And the greatest thing in my eyes is to have facilitated structure without any remnants of me. It doesn't bother me at all, because like I think that a lot of people come to what we do because of me, and then I think a lot of people don't come because of me. You know what I'm saying? Right. And if I could remove that element and have us a brick and mortar building that we could move forward with, that would be great.
And I mean, to be honest, like, you don't care about the name, you care about the legacy. You care.
I want to see our trade. I love our trade. I think that I mean, I know it sounds corny, but I think that I've been forgiven a lot of things. I should be dead right now. There's a lot of things that should have gone wrong in my life, and I think it's because God was like, you're supposed to be a farrier and you're supposed to carry on with being a farrier. And I mean, I don't think I'm divine. I don't think I'm better than anybody else, but I damn sure think I was supposed to be a farrier.
It's I would agree with that, because in my own life, it's like every time that it was, I didn't know if I had enough money to get home.
Yeah.
Right? Every time something turned up.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that's divine. I don't believe in, I believe in fate, but I don't believe in happenstance.
No.
I don't believe you just end up somewhere.
No, I've passed too many semis on the side of the road with their flashers on. I'm like, man, that could be us.
Right.
And for some reason, it isn't. And I'm not saying that I don't work hard on keeping my truck going. I'm just saying it's like, holy cow.
Well, man, this has been absolutely amazing.
I appreciate you having me. And
I when I reached out to you, I literally was like, well, the worst you can say is no, because there's certain guys in this interview, Chris Gregory, you, Dusty Franklin. I met Dusty last year at the convention, just a little high. This is Dusty, and each one of you has been absolutely amazing. And you don't treat, if I can say this to any farrier that's listening to this podcast or hears this podcast, or if you're thinking about going to farrier school or whatever, you can ask the questions.
Oh, yeah.
You have never made me, anyone in the entire AFA convention, every clinic, every contest, has never made me feel stupid because I didn't know.
Yeah.
They would help me.
No, because every one of us is like, you can see that a lot of them, you can see, it's a good thing. When I was AFA president, we were here when I was AFA president, and you ask the staff, you just ask people, you ask security guards, like, how things going? They're like, man, this is the best group of people.
Yeah, like that last night at the bar, I didn't even know the table, and they're like, sit down, have a beer.
Oh, yeah, and I guarantee you, I can tell you for a fact that the bartenders have never served that much alcohol and never had a fist fight. Yeah, you saw the security. She was standing there, and she's watching us, and I forget who it was. There was an older guy, and he's like, "Hi, sweetheart, how you doing?" Just like, Good people, and they
it's
just
a brotherhood, sisterhood, brotherhood.
Yeah,
and some of the women, dude, they are amazing.
Well, the sky's the limit for women, because 99.9% women own horses, so they're equal opportunity employers. So there's not any real chauvinistic shit going on out there. It's all equal.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. It was an absolute pleasure.